we'll begin with our roll call. Lena Andrews. Morgan Overton.
Present.
Dr. Jamil Bey. Tammy Thompson.
Present.
Karen Garrett.
Here.
Jerome Jackson. Councilwoman Deb Gross. Mark Masterson.
Present.
Deirdre Washington. Marcus Reed. Dr. Paul Spradley.
Hey, y'all.
Alan Cisco. Derek Tillman. Esther Teclay.
Here.
Adrian Wonaha.
Present.
I am Kelly Ware and I am present, and our last seat is vacant. All right, so we will proceed with our minutes from our March 2nd meeting. Has everybody had the opportunity to review the minutes? Are there any additions or corrections to said minutes? If not, is there a motion to approve of those minutes?
I'll move to approve.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Karen. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Any abstentions? Excellent. The minutes are approved. We will now move to our, we're going to announce our new advisory board member. We have just received approval through City Council of our newest member, Tammy Thompson, who will be serving as our homeowner representative. We are very excited to have you, Tammy. I don't know if you wanted to say a few words or wave or anything.
Yeah, I'll just say that I'm honored to serve, and I look forward to learning more about HOF and serving in my best capacity.
Well, we're delighted to have you, Tammy. Excuse me, I just merged your Tammy and your Thompson together. Excuse me, Tammy. We're delighted to have you and welcome aboard. All right. So now we have two registered public commenters. Is our first public commenter prepared to speak?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
And you'll have 3 minutes. I'll give you a heads up whenever you have 1 minute left.
Okay, great. I greatly appreciate that.
Yep, no problem.
All right. So I just want to introduce myself. This is my first time attending these particular meetings. I've attended other meetings and I will be a regular moving forward. So my title is Ispomai Chakmam Yahalahi, and I'm the Grand Inca Chief of my nation, which is the Onkwe-Onwe Aborigines Nations of the Americas. I'm also a Grand Council member of the Iroquois Confederacy of Aboriginal American People. And we are here so that we can enlighten the people in this particular area. You call it Pittsburgh. We still refer it to as the Delaware Territory, according to our original treaty that we have with your ancestors in this region, which covers New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Virginia. And we're here to put on the record that we are still here. A lot of people are miseducated and misinformed on who the original inhabitants of the entire Western Hemisphere is, and we are those people. We still have enforceable treaties in all of the areas in this particular part of the Americas, we call it, and you call it North America. And we're here to establish that everyone understands their role and responsibility to our people. And this is in law. And a lot of times people don't understand that these things exist because they've never been enforced. Well, we're here now to enforce what our ancestors set in place between your ancestors to work peaceably together. When it comes to our lands, when it comes to our resources, we must be included. This is called free and prior informed consent. And if we don't have it, these are acts of genocide, which are punishable by law. And this is not a threat. So please don't take it that way. This is lawful. I'm speaking law. And a lot of times people don't understand what lawful language is. They do understand legal language, and legal and lawful are not the same. Legal more applies to, let's say, commercial, right? Commercial business, things of that nature, right? Commerce, that's legal. Lawful is something very, very different. It's constitutional law. It supersedes all other laws except for treaties. Treaties are the supreme law of the land, and the Constitution is, I would say, equal. I won't say it's over, because we have a government-to-government agreement and relationship that our ancestors set in place before any of us who are on this call were even thought of as a glimmer in one of our parents' eyes. Like,
I
that
wanted
is.
to give you a 1-minute warning.
Thank you so much. And so
Yep.
I'm here to observe. I'm here in an observatory capacity to hear how you're distributing our lands and our resources, and then to further engage in what we see our cosmovision as it relates to lands and resources. You call them houses and buildings. We call them land fixtures because they come from the land. Everything comes from the land, from the food to the materials that we use to build things on the land. It all goes back to the land. And we're the original stewards of our lands, and we are here to make sure that everyone is aware of that and what our role is going forward in working with you and your department or organization entity in a capacity that is beneficial to everyone. And that is also to include the indigenous peoples here. Thank you so much, and I yield.
Thank you so much for those comments. It's great to have these viewpoints at the table. This is Adrienne. I'm privileged and honored to be here as part of the advisory board. So thank you for that so much. I think your comments, really tie into the critical nature of our public comment, and how we really want to make sure that there's lots of great and robust opportunities for us to hear voices. So thank you so much for that comment.
Absolutely. I appreciate your response. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for those remarks. It's certainly something to keep in mind as we move forward. Our next public commenter registered is Megan Confer-Hammond.
Thank you. And so good morning, everyone. My name is Megan Hammond. I'm the Executive Director of the Fair Housing Partnership of Greater Pittsburgh. And I understand that the Housing Opportunity Funds Advisory Board's retreat occurred recently. I hope you all enjoyed it, and perhaps for the next retreat, you can do a ropes course and we can hear all about it. I want to comment that today, as you are aware, April is Fair Housing Month, and that is to commemorate the signing of the Federal Fair Housing Act by President Lyndon Baines Johnson on April 11th, 1968. But I want to put that date in context of being nearly a decade of the civil rights movement imploring Congress to pass the bill. And the Fair Housing Act would not be voted on in Congress. And what many people don't know is that Martin Luther King Jr. left the American South in 1965 after the Voters' Rights Act, and he went to Chicago to advocate for a housing discrimination bill. And the strategy was to unite Americans on the racial segregation that exists within our neighborhoods throughout the country. However, over a 3-year period, white Americans simply did not support a housing discrimination bill in large numbers, and politicians viewed such a bill as political suicide, as we discussed the concept of property and housing and decision-making. So the Fair Housing Act was ultimately, arguably, only even brought to a vote in Congress because of the aftermath of Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination, the 7 days before the Fair Housing Act was passed. So I want to say that I view the work of the Housing Opportunity Fund as an extension of what our civil rights leaders started in the 60s, and recognizing the incredibly important nature of housing having an equity lens. And it is my sincere hope that this body will prioritize fair housing and equity continuing within its decision-making moving forward. And I say that because I understand that today you all will join committees. And to those of you who will join the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, you certainly have my commitment of doing the hard work that's necessary to understand
Just
and
wanted to let you
apply
know
the
you
equity
have a
needs within our
1-minute
low-income
warning.
housing. And I hope that you will continue to allow me to robustly participate in what is really all of our shared goal of fostering a diverse and inclusive Pittsburgh. I appreciate your time, and let's go do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Up next is a presentation on the plan for our annual allocation plan community feedback survey. Chad, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. My name is Jab Burns. I'm with the Urban Redevelopment Authority of Pittsburgh. I just wanted to let everybody know that we have started to put together stuff for the annual allocation plan community feedback survey this year. Basically, we started putting the survey together with our internal department of just because we have some programming that is more useful and beneficial for data collection. So we are utilizing our internal department to do this. And today we're going to have John Bonello present the survey that we put together and collect feedback from all of you to see if you guys want anything added, changed, additions, etc. But also I'm reaching out to different people in all the different council districts to see if anybody is interested in holding in-person events as well. So that is in process also. We wanted to get a kickstart on this year so that we can move forward effectively with collecting this feedback. Our goal is to try to have this open between May 1st and July 31st. And we'll keep you updated with anything going forward with this. But I'm going to pass it off to John Bonello here at the URA so that he can show you the survey that we put together and get feedback from all of you. So take it away, John. I will stop sharing my screen and allow you to share.
Thanks so much, Jad. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Bonello. I'm a data and evaluation specialist in the Strategic Data and Impact Unit at the URA. SD&I works mainly on coordinating our primary data collection and impact reporting. So we're internal evaluators for the URA. And it's been really fun to work with Jad, and I'm sure it will be fun working with all you on this survey. So we have adapted the survey from last year. It will look very similar. Any edits or changes that we've made to the survey design are for two reasons. The first is to increase response rate, and the second is to increase decision-making power. So designing the survey to give results that will lend itself more easily to decision-making. So it's really exciting. We use a survey collector called Alchemer. It has really great functionalities, and I'm really excited to show you today. I'm going to ask you to hold your comments and your questions and any edits you may have until the end so I can get through the whole draft, but then we can go ahead and revisit them. So if you have some, make sure you write them down or remember them, and then we can address those afterwards. So we're starting on, this is a preview test mode that we have on Alchemer, which we love, and we're going to start on the intro page. So the intro page communicates all of the things that it needs to, right? The name of the survey, who's disseminating the survey, what it's for, the annual allocation plan, how the data will be used, and then when you can look for the final allocation plan. We also provide disclaimers about the survey being anonymous, how it won't affect funding decisions. The results are analyzed without identifying information. There's a couple of features that are designed to increase response rate here. The first is providing the time it takes to complete, and the second is a progress bar, which we love, lets people know how far they have to go before they finish. Moving into the first question. So the first thing that we want to ask is, do you belong in the target population for this survey? So the target population was identified as renters and homeowners living within Pittsburgh city limits, housing professionals or advocate, social service provider. If somebody chooses none of these, they'll be disqualified from the survey. And this is just a way for us to keep the data clean and to make sure that the data is representative of the target population. So I'll go ahead and select one. If you are a renter or a homeowner, another question pops out around where you live. If you're just a housing or social service provider, we don't ask the same amount of information, but we do for residents. Moving into the next page, this is really the most important page here on the survey. So this is the ranking question. What I love about Alchemer is we have this very easy click and drag functionality. So you can move everything over. You can change the rank very intuitively, which we love. The way that we've written the questions, and this is a little bit different from last year, is we're asking respondents to rank a subset of the items in the list rather than ranking the whole list. And this is for two reasons. The first is because 8 items is a little much to ask a respondent to rank. Generally, the best practice is not to ask respondents to rank more than 6 items. But the second reason is because when you ask respondents to rank a subset from a list, you get 2 metrics instead of 1. When they rank every item in the list, you only get average ranking, so where they rank in relation to each other. When you rank a subset, you get 2 metrics, you get your average rank, but you also get the number of ranks. So the number of times any item appeared on the list. So it's just an extra way to make a decision, gives you a little bit more flexibility in interpreting results. So we have that for 2 sets of lists here. The first is going to be, here are some of the ways funds are being used by the Housing Opportunity Fund already. The second is going to be, here are some other ways that funds could be used. So again, we're only asking them to rank 6 for those reasons that I described above. And then we also have our open-ended question here. I think this is really smart, especially since we've primed the respondent to think about ways funding is already being used, could be used, and then it just prompts them to think, do I have any other ideas that I can contribute here? So I think that's a really smart choice from the last draft. The next page is about demographic information, and we know collecting demographic information can be sensitive, so we have an opt-in. So are you willing to answer a few questions? If you hit no, you can move to the next page. But if you choose yes, then our demographic questions, appear. We collect demographic information in a standardized way in our surveys here at the URA that are modeled after like the census and how they collect demographic information. So race, ethnicity, age, sexual identity and sexual orientation, and gender identity. These are the only 2 questions that are not modeled after census data. This is a University of Chicago model, and this just makes it easier for us to analyze intersectional identities. So for instance, if we're doing a analysis on women, we want to make sure that we're including transgender women in our women analysis and not excluding them as a separate group. So this just makes it a little bit easier. We have annual income. And then I noticed on the last draft, there was a list of other protected groups. Some of those protected groups we can determine using demographic information, just classic demographic information. But the ones that we couldn't, I just rephrased to be a little bit shorter, but I did include them because they seem really important. So for instance, I practice a religion that's not a majority where I live. I'm an immigrant or refugee. I'm a single parent. And they can go ahead and indicate whether they identify with any of these groups, and we can provide that analysis for you. And I always forget that if I don't answer the questions on the preview, and it doesn't let you move to the next one. So I'm like, okay, here we go. Uh-oh, I missed one right here. All right, on this last page, so Jad advised me to go ahead and remove the COVID-19 questions. So those were removed. I did keep some of the questions though, in case, and these are mainly related to collecting community feedback. If you decided that you wanted to do more community feedback collection, this would give you some ways to do it that would maybe make it a little bit easier or less like time intensive. So how did you hear about the survey? This would give you a good idea of what channels you're using are bringing the most people in to look at the information or to take the survey. So this gives you a good idea of like where you're getting the most reach. How would you prefer to provide feedback? So if you wanted to do more, collect more feedback, you could get an idea for maybe the best way, setting up an email, setting up a text message or a phone call situation. See, look, I'm already forgetting again. And then would you like to receive updates from the URA about Housing Opportunity Fund? If you hit no, you're like good to go ahead and finish. If you hit yes, we're going to go ahead and ask for the email address there to follow up. And that should, you see? Okay, and that should complete the survey. So that's the survey draft as it stands. It's very similar to last year's, with the exception of some of those edits that we made, like I said, to increase response rate, and then to make the analysis to lend itself more to decision making. So if there are any questions, comments, or edits, we can walk through those now. Jad, if you want to help me out in terms of.
Yeah, and I just want to add one more thing before we move forward. So one of the things that we're trying to do with this year as well is translate it into Spanish. So there will be a Spanish option available. We will also have paper copies that we will take to community events with us, and also creating a QR code along with the link that can be advertised. We're going to do call-ins as well. So we have a few different feedback mechanisms in doing this going forward, but I wanted to share that before we took any questions.
So apologies, but the questions are going to be limited to advisory board members at this time for questions of the team around these surveys. Does anybody have any questions, suggestions for anything? Do we feel that there's anything that was missed here as it relates to previous surveys, or things that we want to ask going forward? I'm just rewinding a little bit because we do have so many new members, is that we make our allocation plan in the fall. I do remember there were a couple of you who joined actually during that allocation plan meeting, which was probably one of our more intense meetings of the year. And so at that time, what we do is we allocate funds across the different programs and income guidelines. We reference those back to how the URA staff who runs these programs, how they would ideally allocate things, and we're able to look at a tab of how I would allocate it, how the advisory board overall would allocate it, how the URA staff would allocate it, and then we also review how the community overall would like for us to allocate funds based on their program priority. So if they say, you would get a recommendation that's kind of commiserate with what they're saying. So if everybody says the most important thing is to keep renters in their home, then they get then the community budget gets a higher score for that item in that particular program on the piece on our template that we review in the fall. So this is essentially that survey that would go out to the community so that they can see, so that they can basically inform what the community budget is for that tab, so that we can reflect on that as we're making our choices going forward. And so this goes out from now until I believe we're talking about July 31 in order to get that input to inform our budget conversations in the fall. So sorry, it was a very long backstory, but I just thought it was important for everybody to kind of know where this piece fit in and why we do this. So long backstory done. Adrian, I believe you were the first advisory board member with your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. So this is interestingly ties, to public comment. So something I think is important is, we've had public comment throughout the year. The surveys are great, and I'm really excited about additions. I think we want to talk more about our outreach strategies. How are each one of the members of this advisory team taking this, translating it to our constituents, making sure that in this format or other formats, people are weighing in, but also taking back throughout the last year, we had a series of public comments. I think that it would be important for us to translate all of the public comments back into the material that we're looking at when we have these survey results. I also think that this is important to go back I want to go back to public comment again. Public comment doesn't happen at one time. It happens throughout the year. Our engagement with public comment has not been great. We're not having in-person meetings. We've had trouble with technology. We only have this small minute in the beginning of a meeting for people to, raise public comment. So I would like us to think as part of our outreach and surveying, how we're managing public comment. For the URA board meetings, people can make public comment. They can also submit questions during the meeting, and then those questions can get answered. That ongoing facilitation of public comment really is the robust, on the ground, to the moment feedback that we're getting from across the community. So I want to make sure we take this opportunity when we're talking about our annual outreach to revisit public comment and to think about how we're getting that every time and how we're translating public comment into this yearly body of information that we're using for decision making.
Thanks so much, Adrian. And I think I had very similar thoughts. I always am thinking about that in terms of survey design. And I really took that into account on that last page there in terms of hearing from the community, what is the best way for you? What is the easiest way for you to provide us with information? And I think that information can be leveraged into making maybe a larger plan of collecting community feedback a little bit more regularly and operationalize that process a little. So I'm really glad to hear that that part of the survey is really jiving with that priority there.
Absolutely. And I think it gives us a level of transparency that's going to help everyone. I think it gives us, more opportunities. Today we started our conversation with voices at the table that we haven't heard before.
Mm-hmm.
We want to hear all those voices.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everyone. I'll lower my hand.
Paul?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. So I have a couple questions, but I'll put them into, I think maybe 3 buckets, maybe 2 buckets. The first is usability. So how long is the survey in minutes, and is it mobile friendly?
Yeah, so it is mobile friendly. Alchemer does a really good job of making sure that they're mobile friendly. And part of the distribution, Alchemer generates a QR code. So we'll be making it very easy to access this digitally. It's really important for me. I have a little bit of an evaluation background in media, and the best way to get this information is to connect the respondent with it in 1 step or less. And in 1 step or less, but in as few steps as possible. And a QR code can be really effective that way. And I'm sorry, what was the first question again?
How long is the survey in minutes?
How long is the survey? Right now, it's 3 to 5. After we have an approved draft, though, we will be beta testing, and the time that will go in this spot right here will be determined by the beta test. So usually for a survey like this, I'd like to do 5 to 7 beta testers of people who are not familiar with this information. And we'll be asking those people to go through and identify where respondents might get tripped up or what's going on. But Alchemer times those beta test responses, and we'll get an accurate readout of how much time afterwards.
Okay, thank you. And then the second bucket is really around marketing. You answered one of the questions with the QR code, but I think is there a goal that we're trying to reach? Is the kind of the first question, and then are we open to putting flyers in local libraries, banks, and grocery stores that have this QR code using social media? I think that would be a way that the board could help out. Like if the URA posts something, but let us know when this is going to post. I could repost this on my LinkedIn page if I had a heads up about when this, if I'm looking for this, right? And I guess the third question that is, are we open to like a gift card, like, please complete this for a chance to win a $50 gift card to help us reach our goal, and if whatever that goal is.
So Paul, I have an answer to some of that, and that is that I have you in my notes as a chair or co-chair of our community outreach strategy, to which we can make I think all of those things happen, and more. And I think I'm actually kind of excited about, and I mean, I guess it's not accidental, but going from our retreat where we're kind of having these thoughts and discussing these ideas and really relaunching these committees to immediately having something ready to go. Because it's easy. It's like, oh, community outreach, vague and generalized, versus community outreach. And we now have a task to set those, to get this out there as much as possible. And I think that that'll really kind of give us a little bit of, impetus to really get going. And I think those are all wonderful ideas. And I look forward to seeing you and others on this call, and absent from this call, running with us. So thank you.
Yeah, and I will also like to say that incentivizing surveys is a best practice that I always recommend if you have funding to support it. It's a great way to drive up your response rate. In terms of a target, I know last year the response rate was around 230 or something close to that, somewhere around there. And I know in the past you've had even close to double that. I think that if we collect 250 responses, that's an excellent response rate. That's a response rate that I could pay Alchemer $1,700 to collect for me. So if we can do that without spending $1,700, I think that would be incredible. But if we can get even close to the previous, 450 or 500 responses that you had collected before, that would also be excellent. I'm usually thrilled with more than 200. So.
Thanks, John. Mark?
Thanks. You answered some of the questions I had. What's the targeted opening and close dates of the survey?
I think they were May 1st to open, July 31 to close. So it would be a 3-month collection.
Second, is it possible to send a PowerPoint of each of these as a slide if folks wanted to, maybe try to get you some more detailed feedback instead of trying to do it right here, right now?
Yeah.
I haven't seen it for the first time. That would be helpful, I think. As far as distributions, you talked a little bit about getting it out. Are you looking at community partnerships or community newspapers or community newsletters, Hazelwood homepage, South Pittsburgh, and others as a way to, some paid, some probably free, to get word out?
Yeah, so I know like Jad is working very closely with the board on the distribution plan part of it. So I would defer to them in terms of that question. In regards to your feedback question, I can send, Alchemer allows me to send test links where you can leave comments directly in the survey for me to comb through later. I would say that the more time that we spend collecting feedback and like making edits, the longer it will take to do the translation into Spanish and to make the written parts. And we want to make sure we have enough time to develop those additional materials, but we need to have a master copy first. So I'll defer to Jad in terms of collecting that kind of feedback, but I can send a test link for him to distribute for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. We should send that out to all the board members. And then, if you guys can get that to us by, the end of next week so that we can, make our final plans, I think that would be fine. Yeah. And then in terms of, the marketing aspects that you were talking about, Mark, I think like Kelly had mentioned, within the marketing and outreach committee, I think that if we formalize this process and what we want to do and how we want to push this out in that committee, I think that will be awesome, and we'll really leverage all the strengths and thoughts all of you have to do this. So that would be my suggestion there.
Thanks. And then I had a question about, I think the results that we've been getting seem to be skewed over the past, since we've been less in person, it seemed to get skewed towards homeowner, and maybe I'm misremembering, but I think that's been the case the past couple of years. Are we going to do anything to try to work with maybe PER or some other groups that are really focused on tenants and renters in the city to make sure that they, get some help to get the word out too.
Yeah, I think if, there are certain organizations that you think are going to be the most beneficial for us to contact in this process, definitely send those our way so that whenever this gets launched, we have a couple different mechanisms that we're going to try than we did last year. So one, at all the community engagement events that the URA has been attending, we have been collecting emails from every single individual. So we are going to send this directly to all the residents that we've engaged with over the last, I think it's been like 7 months that we started collecting them and keeping them in a database. So we're going to shoot that out directly to residents. We do plan to work with all of the RCOs within the city and other organizations that we're aware of and shoot this out to them so they can send it to their individuals. Obviously working with all of your networks. Also going to try to work with our communications team at the URA to push through social media channels to targeted populations, specifically lower income populations, but we can see if there's a way to potentially do the renter versus homeowner. I don't know if that's possible with social media just due to the lack of information that is on those, but but if there are specific organizations you think we should include in the list that we blast out, just let us know.
And then I know I'm asking a lot of questions, but not directly related to the survey, but when do you think I assume we're also going to be doing a series of in-person meetings again this year. And if that's a correct assumption, when do those start and how many of them do you anticipate?
So, I'm open to suggestions here, but I did start reaching out to different organizations. Something that was recommended to me last year by people internally at the URA was to try and hit each council district and get every council person involved in these as well, along with our board also. So I have a few of them that are in the process of being set up. I reached out to organizations in every council district. I wanted to try to do at least one per council district with targeting potentially 2. So we'll see. And I wanted to try to do it during the open period between May and the end of July. Also, we do have which I don't know if we've really talked about this in this meeting before, but there's a fair housing summit at the end of this month, which I would encourage all of you to attend. But at that summit, we're going to try to potentially have this ready, which is just the last 2 days of April, so that we can advertise this at that event and kind of having a good launch pad for this survey.
Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, great. If there aren't any other questions, I just want to thank you for your time today. I'm really excited, not only about this survey, but about the discussion today. I love that everyone is thinking about who's in the target population, who's not in the target population, what happened in years past. These are all amazing things for a team to be talking about in the context of a survey. So I think this is going to be really excellent. Thanks, guys.
And I will note too that, anybody that is a spectator that wants to add some comment to this, if you want, you can shoot me an email with some of that information, and I'll be sure to include that in what we do as edits. Let me reshare my screen here really quick. Okay, so we're moving into the URA administrative updates. We have Kyle Novak from the URA who will talk about a small landlord fund update.
Hi guys, my name is Kyle Novak and I'm with the Urban Redevelopment Authority of Pittsburgh, and I work in the Residential and Consumer Lending Department. I'm one of the Housing Opportunity Fund Program Coordinators, and I'm here to talk about the Small Landlord Fund program update. And if you guys are not familiar with the small landlord fund, it's a program that provides financing to landlords who need to make repairs to 10 or less rental units in the city of Pittsburgh. And the update that we are doing is we are removing the 3% interest rate from the loan and making it a 0% interest rate. And if you guys have any other questions, I can answer them as best as I can. Thank you.
And part of the reasoning of lowering this interest rate is to increase, individuals that might be wanting to utilize this program. So we're going to see if that has any impact on, increasing participation in this program.
Any questions for Kyle or Jad on this change? Well, we started it because we think it's an important program. So changes to make to, increase the utilization, I'm certainly in favor of. So we'll see what happens. All right. Next, I guess, is Derek Kendall Morris on the legal assistance program.
Sure, Kelly. I'll actually be speaking on this. Derek had to.
I didn't think I saw him
today last minute. Yeah. So
right, thanks, Evan.
I'll try to pinch it here, but I think Derek wanted to give an update to the advisory board that the staff will be releasing actually 2 applications for funding in the coming month for the legal assistance program. One is for service providers and another is for a provider to serve as the coordinated entry point for people to enter the program and then get referred to these various providers. So I believe over the last couple of years of this program operating, there has been an application for funding every year where program administrators are brought on kind of per allocation plan. And so this will be for the 2023 allocation plan, as we're anticipating to receive funds sometime in the second quarter here. So we want to have the providers contracted in time to ensure there's not an interruption of service. So those will be posted on the URA's website on our proposals and bid section for the legal assistance program later this month. Happy to take any questions. I don't know if I'll have the answer for sure, but can have Derek get back to people too if there are ones that I'm not able to answer on the spot here.
Okay, I guess you can keep rolling with the overview of administrative dollars then.
Yeah, this is kind of hope to cover this at the retreat, but we didn't really have time. So, did want to talk to advisory board about the administrative line item, which is often a topic of discussion and people want to know more about it. So in 2022, there was around 18.5 thousand hours billed to HOF by staff at the URA. So staff at the URA keep track of their time by hourly, and keep track of their time hourly, and will bill to different sources depending on what their the project or initiative that they're working on is. And so people are not solely billing to HOF or solely billing to other sources. It can depend on what someone does in the course of a day or a week, but that amount of time represents around 10 full-time equivalent positions, full-time labor for an entire year of work. Staff from the URA's finance department, legal, housing, obviously, and then our quality controls and inspections team have all billed to HOF in 2022 when they do work related to projects and initiatives that are funded by the Housing Opportunity Fund. Some other administrative sources that we do have at the URA, just to kind of give you a whole holistic picture here, CDBG, Community Development Block Grant money, home investment partnerships, and then the American Rescue Plan Act as well. These are all other sources that people would note on their time cards as they're working throughout the week. And HOF is just one of many sources that we are drawing on. So when you look at wages, benefits, and then costs for actual office space and operating, the real personnel costs to the URA are around $1.4 million in 2022. That being said, the admin line item is capped at $1 million. So it's not like the URA took 1.4 instead of 1 million. That is capped and that's not exceeding 1 million as far as what's taken from the allocation annually. And then I do want to mention that there are other expenses to HOF admin and overhead with operating the program, and those include ASL interpretation, hiring consultants for various things. In the case of 2022, I think the main use of a consultant was for the production of the annual report, and then translation of flyers and other marketing materials, and that was around $15,000. So there will be an audit completed of the Housing Opportunity Fund for 2022 sometime in the next few months, and we can keep the advisory board apprised of when that occurs, and this will show up in it in some form or fashion in an administrative breakdown. So did want to come and talk though about that. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Any questions for Evan?
Thanks, Evan. This is like the first real breakdown that we've had since the start of the fund. So I do appreciate that you guys are able to show what the million is going towards. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. And I know in past meetings, we've talked about trying to update maybe more often with whether maybe biannual. We can see how that's kind of pacing, but I'm glad to be able to share this info.
So 10 full-time positions are the equivalent to make this thing run. It's good to know. We appreciate you guys. Any other questions, comments on our administrative breakdown? Okay. So we'll move on to advisory board administrative items. The first being that we recently received notification from the mayor's office that we will no longer be meeting in council chambers, citing staffing issues as it regards to technology. So essentially our two choices are to meet in person in council chambers and not have that broadcast or live streamed. So essentially kind of what happens in chambers stays in chambers, more or less, or be virtual exclusively without the possibility to be to do a hybrid meeting. I don't think it's ideal, especially as it relates to community feedback and engagement. However, that's where we are right now. Open to to thoughts, suggestions, or recommendations from other members. But we certainly, I think we just got this. I just saw it last week, so we're keeping everybody informed as we go. I don't know if anybody has anything they would like to add to the conversation, or if we want to just accept that for informational purposes. But for now, that's kind of where we find ourselves.
So this is Adrian. I thought that, that it was critical to us and, what was in the legislation and into the community that we have some level of broadcast. So, I just want to put that back on the table. If that's changed, and, it's changed, but, is the commitment to really have public, not only for folks who are, able to be, whether it's virtual or in a meeting where we're sitting in a group, or, is it that anyone who needs to have, insight into what the group is doing, that there is a mechanism for that to happen. So just putting that back on the table, want to make sure I'm clear.
Yep. No, so like I said, I too have concerns especially about the access to government issue. This kind of the in-person non-stream version kind of takes us back to before the pandemic, because we were always able to be kind of streamed, and somebody would be like, I was up at 2 a.m. and saw the City Channel. What are you doing? With a random, so it's kind of it's a step backwards in my estimation. We are not the only group that this has happened to. And if it's the, I've kind of coasted, I guess I'll say, on this as the outgoing chair. I didn't want to start something that the next person would have to finish, like, oh, well, Kelly got us into this fight.
Yeah.
We're not the only committee that this has happened to. And I think that the overall tone of who else this has happened to is not the fair and equitable look that we would want for the city. The Gender Equity Commission is on this list. The land bank is on this list. It's a few words, like, these are kind of critical issues from an equity perspective to have access to, from my speaking as myself, not on anybody's behalf, but I'm concerned as a resident about a lack of transparency and access to these very critical committees. And I believe there was one other on the list, Jad, I don't know if you recall, but those 3 stuck out as like, wow. So the Housing Opportunity Fund, Land Bank, and Gender Equality Commission, we need transparency around at least these 3 things, if nothing else on the list. So I would hazard that to our assembly as to what type of action we would want to see, if we want to reach out to other chairs or committees, or what type of action, if any, we want to take. But just stating that it happened, that's where we find ourselves at the moment, that I have concerns that I think you share, and that we should investigate what our next steps could be. Anybody else? I'm sorry, I said I wasn't going to get on the soapbox, but I climbed right back on top of it. Descending. Does anybody else have any thoughts or comments?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think these committees that you mentioned are critical, and that transparency in how they're being managed is critical, that the public has as much access as possible. Is there anyone we can talk to, or has there already been a conversation? I'm not sure what the process is for voicing concerns about this decision.
So it was kind of an administrative memo it didn't come to me. Actually, it came to the URA, who shared with me as chair last week. So I would imagine that the next step would be to reach out to the administration and say, how do we correct this? How do we fix this? And whether that's done under our own banner, or if that's done under our banner and in combination with everybody else's banner. I think, especially given, I think we're kind of the kid sister in this argument. I think a lot of people have had eyes on the land bank for a number of years, and now that they might actually be moving some properties, would be irate at that notion. I think we all were familiar. We're here, I think, when the city kind of more or less exploded around the release of the Gender Equity Commission report. So I think that is probably, I think we're kind of a subtitle to the Gender Equity Commission report. Like the committee meetings are going, are becoming less transparent, I think would be. So I think our best bet would be probably to combine forces with some other groups. Although it might be nice tonight to ask nicely before kind of blowing everything up. This is a friendly administration. I don't want to, I don't want to sound like I'm advocating marching down. I'm on Grant Street, like marching down the street and with torches blazing. However, friendly administration or not, that this is not an equitable and transparent move, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And it could be just an oversight, some not really paying attention, but right. I think you're right. It could be a really bad look for the administration. So I would think that however you guys want to move forward, but I think it's very important that we express our concerns to the administration in whatever way the group sees fit.
Mark?
I agree, but I'm also wondering sort of in the interim, because if it doesn't, however long that takes, whether, whatever that process is with the mayor's office, if that takes more than 30 days, then we're still here sort of in this way as, online only. Or I guess we could be at city council without any access to broadcast. What does the URA do for their board meetings? And is there a possibility of, doing some of that?
So at the URA, everything is remote at this time, but they do Zoom through like a webinar format, which is, I can talk with the URA and see if we, want to look into that, but it still would just be, remote. We don't do anything in person right now.
That's simulcast through Facebook though, right? I know it used to be at the beginning of like earlier in the pandemic, so you could.
I would defer to somebody else to
Okay.
answer that question. I truly don't know, but I do think it is streamed somewhere. I'm just not sure how it happens.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, it is streamed on Facebook.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So
Does it have to be City Hall? Like, is the issue the location, right? Like, are we able to do something in another physical space that also has it being streamed, and then just like it was today, the person who put it up on YouTube and things like that made it accessible for everybody else? Are we able to have it as a hybrid, but we identify a new location? Is there something I'm missing around that?
So the person that does that works for the city channel, and apparently that's part of the challenge, is that individual, I guess, needs to not be in Chambers, that they need to be in their location. And so they're no longer going anywhere, so even to Chambers to broadcast. So if we want to be broadcast through all the official city pieces, they're only doing that option remotely. They're not, which is why we wouldn't be in Chambers.
Yeah, and I think that, I think it's possible for us to do it potentially. We'll have to follow up with the city. But we, the way it was done in person in Chambers, they have all the technology in that room where, you're able to like zoom in on Kelly who's speaking. Basically, it would just be, if we did meet in person, everybody would just need to have like their computer with them. And where would that be? And so I think there's some like questions and things we would need to determine with that, and also coordinate with the city, because they still are willing to do the virtual aspect of it. There just would be no in-person assistance for the technology piece.
And it would need to be someplace that could welcome the public as they attended. So, we can brainstorm again. This is just barely a week old, where I just, fired off a few angry emails, and that was that. But so this is our first time having this conversation out loud, but I think we'll maybe put some more thought into what the pleasure of the advisory board is. I think maybe it sounds like there's some consensus around starting an initial email or letter to the mayor's office and perhaps to the other chairs, and see if they want to take some further action. And I guess that's something that I will collaborate with my successor on, who is TBD, as we move forward. Anything else on this this piece? Okay. We had so next on the agenda would be our retreat report out. We had I thought it was a lovely retreat. We had very close to 100% attendance. It was on March 17th on the south side. We're in person, a lot of us meeting in person for the very first time, reviewed and assessed whether we think the HOF is on the right track, how we can make some tweaks and edits and changes. We did some icebreakers. We got to meet a lot of the URI staff that helps to make our programs run and function more smoothly. And then also kind of go from the big picture of where we want to go and what we want to do to kind of combining things into these different committees to help us usher things forward. So those new committees are community outreach, marketing, and advocacy together as like things in one committee. The programming and innovation committee to both assess our programs and also kind of seek out other programs that are happening, other innovations that are happening in the fair housing space, in the shared land trust space, kind of what's cool in other places around the country that we might be able to implement here. And that would be also part of utilizing our demo dollars, which we workshopped a few other names. It's still like maybe innovation dollars, things of that nature, so that we can use that fund to create some new and innovative programming and kind of seeking out that information. Diversity, equity, and inclusion committee that would encompass both fair housing and making sure that as we are contracting with service providers, with developers, et cetera, that we're doing that with an eye on a DEI lens as well. We agreed that all of these committees would also not just be composed of HOF advisory board members, but that we would be able to invite and include other members of the community to help us do to help inform and help us to do the work on these different committees, and really that we're narrowing it down to 3. We've got a lot of new members with enthusiasm. I think some of our longstanding members were hopefully a little bit rejuvenated after, delicious pasta and a day of thinking about this and, kind of synergizing. And so it is the expectation, but not requirement, because it's not in our bylaws, so we can't really require it. It is our expectation jointly that everybody on the HOF sign up and actively participate in at least one committee. And there are 18 of us, 17 of us, there's a lot of us. And so that should not be a problem to have 3 robust functioning committees, especially once you factor in that we can add in community members to help us get this work done. So I thought it was great use of 3 hours, and very excited about how things are developing. And did I miss anything from anybody's perspective around the retreat that you would like to share with folks who are not here? There's also food that wasn't pasta, if you were curious. All right. Okay, so that's how we've developed these new committees, and we have over the DEI committee, Derek Tillman has volunteered to head that up. We have Paul, who's volunteered to take lead on community outreach, marketing, and advocacy. This does not mean that you are not able to jump in as a co-chair or in a leadership role in these committees, just that we've got point people already to help us move these things forward. And we already heard a lot of Paul's ideas around outreach and marketing. Next, we have Alan Sisko, who is also who's one of our newer board members, who has some enthusiasm around programming and innovation. So we've got 3 point people. Please reach out to either them or Jad or both, I would hazard a guess, because Jad is kind of our communication glue, to let them know where you would like to serve. And you can also, of course, if you can't pick, you could do multiple. And also, I think we're also taking recommendations for people in the community who are not members of the advisory board, who, if you say like, oh, who's really great at this, but is not on the advisory board that we should have as part of this conversation, we'll take those nominations and suggestions as well. I
So
think that's,
Kelly,
Oh, yes.
just to make sure and highlight, so I missed the end of the retreat. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is going to be rolling in the affirmatively furthering fair housing conversation, correct? And so that group's going to be working on a couple of different things that are related, but also, sort of separate and distinct. Did I hear that follow up correctly?
Yes, you did hear that follow up correctly. So we will when we're actually doing the listing of the reports, we will the listing of the committees, we will make that more explicit. But yes, so the DEI and fair housing and affirmatively furthering fair housing. Although I guess we use the fair housing piece around the DEI because some of the affirmatively furthering piece links to more directly into the community outreach and advocacy, because that's how you're affirmatively furthering in some ways. But yes, you did hear that correctly, that is one committee, and I imagine that it would be yes, that is one committee, possibly two working groups, perhaps under the same umbrella, but looking at similar types of metrics, et cetera, as we're going forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I will note as well, I did send out a document to everybody on the board after the retreat. If you didn't get it for some reason, please let me know. It outlines the 3 different committees, what the ideas were talked about as being top priorities within each committee. And then, really setting out a plan for each committee whenever they first meet to say what your priorities are within this committee based on what was discussed at the retreat, and set some goals and objectives with timelines, so that we want all of our committees to actually be useful and have objectives that you're trying to achieve, rather than not really having any mission or striving towards something. So I do highly encourage that whenever you guys first meet, to look at that document to kind of plan out how each of these committees is going to react to everything and move forward.
Chad and Kelly, can I maybe make a recommendation? Kind of a 2-part. The first is, so it feels a little passive right now as far as committee engagement. Can we send out, Chad, you had the form already, but if you could sort of resend that as a poll, so that people can choose what committee they want to be on. And then I think that most survey tools, you can collect, what they want to do and their email, and then just send that Excel spreadsheet to the person that's leading it, so that then they have that information there. They don't have to kind of say, hey, what's this person's best email or whatever. We can just collect that and have folks maybe do that by next Thursday or so. So have a timeline so that we're making movement. And then if in that poll you could put who the leader is, and then if there is an urban redevelopment authority person that might be partnering with that group, kind of as an internal person, if their name could be added as well, just so that they kind of understand where they're starting, and that I think that takes it from hey, let's hope that everyone fills this out, to we also are able to then account for the folks who aren't here today by sending this out and just asking everybody to select 1, 2, or 3 of the committees you want to be on, but at least one, and to do that by a certain time, so that we are able to hold those folks that aren't on a committee accountable to joining.
Yeah, I like that idea. That's something I can put together and shoot out to everybody.
Look at you, marketing already, internally. Internal outreach. Okay, great. All right, so and now it is time to do our nominations and voting for our next chair. I've greatly enjoyed my time as our chair. However, I am term limited in our bylaws from continuing as such. And so we need a new leader. Nominations have been scarce. We have a chair and chair-elect position that we need to fill. We did receive one nomination that has not, it was unfortunately not extended to be rejected yet, but the others I can say were actually folks were not willing to serve in those capacities, which is fine. We would rather you not accept the position than accept it when you can't do it. So that's fair. Our next, so we do have one nomination for either chair or vice chair. I don't know if she is willing to accept. Adrienne Wonaha, would you be interested in serving in either capacity? I'm very sorry to put you on the spot like this.
Oh, no, sure. Yes, of course. I will support the committee in whatever way seems appropriate.
Okay. All right. So we have Adrienne on our slate in an ambiguous fashion in terms of the role itself. Are there any nominations from the floor for either a chair or a vice chair specifically?
I support the nomination of Adrienne as our chair.
I would second that.
Wonderful. Okay. Do we have any nominations for a vice chair who supports the chair and would serve in the chair's absence? Any nominations for a vice chair?
So this is where we can put somebody on the spot and blindside them?
Like you, Mark Masterson, since you brought it up.
No, actually, I'd like to nominate Dr. Paul Spradley as the vice chair.
I would support that.
I would also support it if Dr. Spradley is willing to back up Adrienne in the unlikely event that she is absent and support her. Adrienne's always here. That's a good gig, Paul.
I think that with that convincing, that I will accept that because Adrienne is always here. She is. Shit.
All right. Do we have any other nominations from the floor? Wonderful. Hearing none, I think that we can just put forth this slate for Adrienne Wonaha as our next chair and for Dr. Paul Spradley as our next vice chair. And since there's no contest, to just put this slate forth, and all those in favor can say aye.
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 Any nays? Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, congratulations, Adrienne and Paul. I know that you guys will be fabulous, and I'm here to help and support however you may need going forward.
Thank you, Kelly.
All right.
Kelly,
I don't know what's next. I'm happy. I feel all warm and fuzzy.
Kelly, I'd like to just thank you. You've done a fantastic job through some really challenging times, from COVID to, transitioning out of it. And I really do appreciate your leadership and all your hard work. I know it's not been easy.
Thank you. Thanks, Mark.
And just echoing Mark from the URA staff perspective, Kelly, you're the first person to have filled this role, and I think you've done a great job kind of laying the framework for how this can work with the chair working with URA staff to, make this all come together. So I know we appreciate the leadership that you've shown and taking initiative to really flesh out the role and, create a path to be followed by the next chair and those after it. So really, we do appreciate it.
Thanks, Emma. It's been a pleasure working with you guys.
Can we get a portrait of Kelly as our inaugural team chair? I mean, we
don't have anywhere to hang it. They made us, we're virtually.
Can we make it our background? No, to echo Evan, I mean, we've all come a long way together, such great work. Thank you for for forging that path, especially when there was a lot of transition at the URA. You know, I think that we've done an incredible job, URA staff, this group, you know, the folks that continue to come for public comment to really bolster this and make it robust. And, you know, we can't stop, you know, reiterating our history and how important it is and how valuable it's been and how valuable you've been. And so, you know, thanks to everybody. I hope we can really archive in a special way the way that this has, you know, started and unfolded. And, you know, if your portrait can't hang in council chambers, at least we can get a headshot with, you know, a good history blurb. Because this has been a heavy lift and we should appreciate that.
Thank you. Okay. Don't make me emotional. We're gonna keep going. We're almost done. I think Jad, are you next with our programmatic updates and expenditures?
Yes, I am.
All right, awesome.
Okay. So from last month, there's been a few bigger changes on some of the line items here. The committed and closed amounts haven't really changed too much. There was the additional for sale development program project that got thrown on from our approval last month. But other than that, you know, just incremental increases across most of the programs. In terms of disbursements, there was a very big increase in disbursements for the homeowner assistance program, which is very exciting. You know, I know there's been a lot of effort going into increasing our contractor pool and trying to quicken the rate of projects going through. And that clearly is happening and moving forward. So very excited to see a very big movement there. And as per usual, I'm going to go through each of our programs and have a little bit of information on each one. So this is our down payment and closing cost assistance program with percent of funds by council district and AMI level. And as always, if you have any comments, please feel to interrupt me and ask questions as we move along. For our legal assistance program, percent of projects by council district and AMI level. Our housing stabilization program. This is the same as last month. I'm still waiting for some updated data from DHS. Homeowner assistance program. Like I said, this is the one where we had a really big outward push of disbursements, which is exciting, meaning a lot of projects are getting completed and moving forward. Our for sale development programs, the only change here is the our for sale development and rental gap. Only change was that one for sale development project that moved forward. And one new thing I did add here, we finally were able to lay out the demonstration dollars in a more clear fashion. So I am including this to show what the demonstration dollars have been used for from inception to now. About 30% was used for Bedford campus projects, 28% for housing stabilization program, about 20% for the LAP pilot, and then 20% for the homeless shelter project that occurred a few years ago. And then 5% went into homeowner assistance. So just some context into what we use this money for historically. And that's all I got.
Jad, if you don't mind, are you seeing an impact, especially in the for sale, with increasing construction costs, and like how are you guys? If you are, how are we dealing, or how are you dealing with that?
So I will defer to Evan on that one.
Yeah, I think we have been seeing some slow up in the not necessarily the utilization, but just the amount of time it's taking projects to really build out their capital stack to be able to do these projects. I do think that one tweak that the advisory board will likely be hearing about in the next month or two is increasing the per unit subsidy amount. Right now it's capped at around $70,000 per rehab and $100,000 for new construction. And those numbers are pre-2020 and beyond. So things have just changed a lot, and we're seeing a lot of projects coming with waiver requests, and to the point that it might just make sense to adjust the program a little bit. So it has been difficult, I think, for CDCs and nonprofit developers, but we're trying to be helpful and tweak the program where we can.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, if there's nothing else, our next meeting will be Thursday, May 4th at 2 o'clock. Unfortunately, not in council chambers with remote options, but entirely remote pending further updates. And I will talk to Adrian and Paul about you know, how we're going to get these letters together and reach out to other chairs, et cetera, so I can help support them in that. If there's nothing else, and Jad, if you can also in that either that email or another email, just give us information on the fair that you had mentioned later at the month. I think that might be something to be interested in attending, and I think I'm done giving you direction, you know, making directives now. That's interesting. like that, my final request, and you know, it's not my last meal, but you know, I don't know if there's anything else, but I just think that might be the only thing in between now and May is whether or not we're in fact just exclusively virtual, and you know, being able to attend that next piece. Also, if you have feedback on the survey from today, we're going to get the slides out to everybody, and you will get your feedback to Jad. Is that you or is that John?
I will include both of us on it.
Okay.
Yeah. So it'll come back to John and myself. And then, you know, John and I will sit down and make any of the corrections that you guys had going forward.
Yeah. So if you want to take a closer look at it in the meantime, because that's a pretty quick turnaround time, because the goal is to have that out at the end of the month at that fair. So if there's nothing else after I said 20 more things from anyone else, then I guess I will take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn. Thank you for your service, Kelly.
All right. Thank you, Paul. We don't need a second. That's it. That's all, folks. Thank you very much. And I will see you from a different square that doesn't light up so much. May 4th at 2 o'clock. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kelly. Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you, Kelly, for everything.